Hello everybody, today I have the pleasure to propose to you this key 59 entitled Sexuality. Well, like usually we're gonna split up in 4 chapters. Let's say first of all we will define the concept of sexuality in general. Then secondly we'll see the reason for being, and after also the field of application. Third, we'll see, let's say, around 30 different techniques plus some tips and advice. All right, so before starting, I just would like to say that we're gonna proceed and we're gonna try to enlarge a perspective because there is different perception regarding sexuality. First is medical, okay, the functioning basically. Secondly, psychologically speaking, okay. Third, it's also, I like to say, down to earth, okay, the pleasure. And fourth, in a certain extent, the spiritual perspective and or perception. And even further than this, the fifth element, the fifth aspect is mystical, okay. So first of all, what is concretely sexuality? Okay, so let's see 5 elements. It's not definition, it's just because sexuality is like most all the topics we saw before. It's personal, there is no miracle recipe, there is only miraculous adaptation. Okay, so even there's not definition, there's concept in a certain extent are personal and are necessarily subjective. But one of them, the first one, is we could say that sexuality is quite obvious, but it's the expression of which we are embodying the materialization. What does it mean? It means this is, to make it, let's say, more down to earth, is the tool to transmit life, first. Secondly, this is a form of pleasure, okay, personal or collective, in quote mark, shared, let's say, and it's a kind of oneness, okay, a unity that we found back, and with love or without, okay. I need to say that is not my point of view, it is what it is, okay. There are a lot of couples, they make love, and they have sex relationship, they have sex, but there is no love. There is sex partners and they only make sex and they don't have love. And some people, they are in love and they don't make sex. It's possible as well. Okay, grandpa, grandma in the retirement. Let's say building, house. I'm not sure when they are 100 years ago, if they are in love, they are doing so much sex. Okay, so it's also very important. I said it's a form of pleasure. Yeah, it's a matter of fact. Okay, why I'm precising? It seems to be obvious, but in certain traditions, certain religions, it has been forbidden to take a certain pleasure of it, okay? It's like if, in this perspective, it's like if you just see, because in that perspective, sex equal giving birth, okay? And without the notion of pleasure, it's like if you were saying that eating is just to get energy. Yes, it's a matter of fact, it's true, but secondly, we can take a pleasure by eating. It's the same principle, is my perspective, my vision. And in this concept, this, let's say we could say, subjectively, it's a narrow vision, narrow-minded vision. In that perspective, we are just here down to earth to let's say, to not survive, but let's say to redeem, or at least try to compensate the faults that we did in the past. So nothing is pure if there is pleasure. Music is bad, movie is bad, dancing is bad, eating should not be with pleasure, and so on. So okay, you can imagine it is not my perspective, it's not my philosophy. Well, anyway, I respect those who believe like this. But anyway, first is the expression of this is a tool to transmit light. Secondly, it's it's a form of pleasure. Third, this is the union of two beings. Okay, and the pleasure can be with or without love. Okay, we will see next chapter. It will be a key 60. 60. I could have done the reverse, but I wanted to finish, of course, with a kind of fire crabs with love, and I will do the link between both. I didn't want to mix up, okay, sex and love, and also because materialistically speaking, it would have been too long. It would have lasted 2 hours and a half, 2 hours and a half, and even more, 3 hours. So, but just also to separate the two concepts, okay? But it can be a union of two beings, okay? Union, reunion. The orgasm, okay, the climax, the orgasm, let's say, it's kind of glimpse of eternity and unity, okay? What does it mean? It means that not only because the quest of this materialistic society, searching all the time towards performance and so on, we have sacralizing systematically the quest of pleasure and thereby the quest of orgasm. There is good sex without not necessarily reaching this climax, okay? Just the fact to be with someone, just with the fact to have caress, just the fact to have an exchange of love or not, but this can be already a source of pleasure, okay? So, but just if we focus only on orgasm, climax, peak, we can say that yes, it's kind of a glimpse, okay, of eternity and also unity that we find back. Okay, what does it mean, eternity? Because when you have this orgasm, most of the time you lose a little bit control for a few seconds. Okay, porcs, you will appreciate the parallel. The porcs, they have a climax, an orgasm of 30 minutes. So my next reincarnation, I want to, no, I'm kidding. Just in the sense that, yeah, eternity at this moment, you lose control. So you lose the notion of space-time. Who are you? Where I am? Where, you know, you lose control. So eternity. And secondly, also, you find back this notion of unity because you lost for a certain period of time your ego. Okay, your ego, you are not limited to your small body and so on, your consciousness, and you have a kind of altered or modified consciousness, and you're making as a whole. Okay, let's say you find back, okay, where we are coming from, that's to say absolute unity for which we have been obliged to separate. Okay, that's referring to the key first, which is duality, is finding back the duality within yourself, unity, Y-O-U, with this person, and for which I told you many times, the verb in Latin, the origin, the roots, to exist, existence, means literally to separate, to fragment. So before being incarnated, okay, in the matter, the density and the density of the vibration, we are part of the big wall in a certain extent, and we have been obliged to separate, to embody, and to incarnate down to earth, okay, which is the metaphor of the fall of Eden, okay, if we believe in it, of course, as a metaphor. So then we can consider that, depending on the perception, philosophy, and so on, but sexuality is spiritual, then emotional, and then physical. Some people, they are just focusing on physical dimension. Okay, they make love and that's it. I mean, they have sex, that's it. Some of them, they have materiality, perspective, perception, plus emotion, okay, which is love, okay, we can consider. And some people perceive with even more hate, more of a view with a spirituality dimension. And even more than this, mystical dimension, for which we will see that is, when I say mystical, is linked to egregores, archetypes, the notion of space-time, the notion of even Akashic record, like from the mankind, and so on and so forth. Okay, anyway, we will develop this later on. Then, what's the purpose? What's the reason for being, and or the field of application, in a certain extent, of sexuality? So, this is quite simple, but we're gonna develop a little bit, unfold the principle, because there is different things to mention before seeing the techniques and the tips. The first one is the first reason for being. Of course, it's quite obvious because we are coming from there. It's a tool to transmit life, okay, to have descendants, offsprings, okay, to anchor in the matter, okay, it's a matter of fact, but it's anchoring, transmitting you genes, family, and so on, and this is kind of access to eternity, okay, because your memory will be maintained and so on. And there is a very interesting Compay Segundo, the great singer, musician from Cuba, is say the following: I'm eternal through three things. I wrote a song. Secondly, I planted a tree. And third, I had kids, okay, children. First one, I had a song. Presently, you can think or imagine that there is people dancing salsa on his song, so he's reactivated. Thanks to that, maybe they will make love and they will have children and they have a wonderful love story and whatsoever, okay? First, so he's eternal through art. We like, we don't like is not a question, but at least some people can reactivate his mind, his spirit in a certain extent. Secondly, by the tree of life, he plants, so there will be forests thanks to that, okay, principle. And third, by children, they will have children and so on and so forth. Okay, so very interesting. This notion that the human beings have within. This is conatus, okay, in philosophy from Spinoza, the fact to want to maintain life and to even to expand life. Okay, we'll see with the notion of force, which is more masculine forces. I'm not saying that women don't want to, it's just a force I will define later. So, to transmit life, one of the reasons for being, which is obvious. Secondly, this is a path towards wholeness, okay? Shared and lonely, let's say, but it's a kind of finding back unity, as we say before, okay? Which is absolutely not the perception that we have regarding the original thing. I'm sorry to say that. The original sin is just the spark of consciousness, okay? It's when the serpent proposed the apple and also to this fruit of knowledge is the fruit of knowing duality, the good, the bad, the black and the white, I mean the darkness and the light, and so on and so forth. So the fact is aware is gonna die, okay, it's a matter of fact. When you are innocent child, your kid is just a baby, 1 year old, he has no problems, he has no fears about death and so on. So just the fact being aware of this, so it's a kind of awakening, it's just an awakening. The fact to be aware of this is what make the change between the absolute and the fact we were, in a quote mark as a metaphor, kind of animals reaching humanity. Okay, that's the point. Okay, so it's not a punishment, it's just aware. It's the fact to be aware. So are you punished because you're adults and you know you're gonna die? And or compared to a kid, an innocence? Not really, right? So it's different perspective. And beyond of that, this original thing is also the fact to see the difference to exist, to see the difference between ego, duality, individuality, okay, it means the same thing. I am this and you are. So we separate the consciousness, the global consciousness as a whole, Okay, so we separate to exist. To understand, this is once again my metaphor with the painting. The painting, let's say, is everything. So the painter, the artist, and the actors, the characters could be divine. Okay, so how God can see himself and experience himself, God is aware. This is when the consciousness is conscious about consciousness, expressing itself. That's quite ambiguous, but this is the metaphor. You need to extract, okay, to separate, to take, let's say, to step back forwards, backwards, to observe, to admire the painting, the beauty of the painting, and the relief of the different characters. But we are embodying the characters, and we need to extract from this, and this is the experience of life, the experience of the existence. That's the point of the original sin. So beyond of that is the notion in the Genesis, the fact we are aware about our body, we have a sex and so on. So when the kids, they are playing girl, boy and so on, they don't really see the difference. But when you're adults, you know the difference. So it's not punishment. It's just a kind of consciousness, and it's just to be aware. Just a word to the wise. Once again, okay? So keep this in mind. Third is a way to be in good health. Okay? Why? And in which? Mentally, physically. Okay? Why? Because is linked to good circulation of there is two kinds of energy, the vital energy and the sexual energy. So this is linked and combined. Okay, this is all the Oriental, let's say Eastern philosophy, Taoism, Hinduism, Buddhism, and so on. This is the quest of the good circulation to be healthy. Okay, the meridians, it's in the Chinese medicine. This is the Chinese medicine is the materialization of Taoism, Tao Te Ching, and so on. Same for Ayurveda. Ayurveda means the science of life. It is application on, in a certain extent, Hinduism by extension, and so on. Okay, so it's just, and it's the same principle. We'll come back later, but in a sense that this is always the quest of good circulation. Qi, we call that in Mandarin, when even literally nowadays when we talk in Chinese, when you use Qi, means literally energy. That's why, but it's subtle energy, is the fifth element, the quintessence for alchemists. This is the ether for Greece philosophy. Okay, the quintessence, it's this subtle energy encompassing, interconnecting, entangling everything in the universe. Okay, anyway, so the good circulation, it is prevalent everywhere. So when you activate and there is a good fluidity, a good circulation, you are healthy. And also in your mind, you are positive and so on. So this is the materialization. One of the school is Qigong. Qi, energy, I told you. Qigong, Tai Chi is this. Okay, good circulation. When people are doing this movement and so on, is the activation. Okay, and the Qi is materialized with the dragon. The dragon, keep this in mind, which is exactly the equivalent for Hinduism, Jainism, different philosophies from India. Okay, even Buddhism in a certain extent, which is prana. It's called prana. It's the serpent, the snake, the serpent of kundalini. Okay, activation. Serpent and dragon is the same concept. Okay, and if you find it back in Genesis, it's the activation of that sexual energy. We will see later. But and so Qi for Chinese, Qi, you can hear the sound by extension with Ki. Is not a key, master key, but in a certain extent, Ki. Ki means literally in Japanese means also energy. That's why you have this movement, this discipline, which is Reiki. Reiki is this activation of this subtle energy. Okay, so once you make love and you have good sex activity in a certain extent, you have a good flow. Okay, otherwise it's like vase. When there is no movement in the water, there's bacteria, and so on. It's the same principle. Okay, so that's why some people are frustrated, a bit angry, because they don't activate this good flow. I'm not saying that it's exclusively and so on. You do meditation, sport, and so on. You can be also you can activate this, of course, with so. And last but not least, is sexuality is not exclusive, but is one of the different path for all the roads lead to Rome, of course, but it is one of the path for awakening. All right, I need to define and to go a little bit further regarding the notion of sex in the sense of energies and forces. Yin Yang. For Chinese, Yin and Yang, Ida Pingala for Hinduism is the same concept, okay? Feminine, masculine, okay? So, is not feminine as gender like male, female, no. Is exactly the same principle as, for battery in electricity. Battery, you have positive, negative. Negative doesn't mean pessimistic and bad, evil and so on. No, it's just a polarity. Okay, so this is the same concept that we're going to see feminine, masculine. Okay, so yin yang, the Tao, it is everything. Okay, for Chinese perspective vision. So it is everything, and to exist, duality, it needs to separate. So yin yang is a movement. Okay, it's like, by the way, is a torus. Okay, that we will see later on. Toroidal energy. Okay, is an activation as a dynamo, dynamic dynamo. Okay, so concretely, it's not sexual dimension, but it's polarity. Okay, so the good example is Vitruvian man. Vitruvian man, we say it's from Da Vinci. No, he borrowed from another one. But concretely, it's the symbol of manpower. Okay, if you see human resources, you can see also in our logo, Shambhali, is this. Okay, so everybody knows is a man. Okay, man, let's say mankind, can be a woman, of course, within a square and within a cycle. Okay, what does it mean concretely? This is a metaphor to be complete human being, finding unity. Concretely, what is it? This kind of polarity. Male dimension, yang, okay, is, we can say this is physics. And female is metaphysics. Meta means in Greek, beyond. Okay, the invisible parts. And physical, okay, it's here, down to earth. So, I'm not saying the men are down to earth and women are dreaming and so on. Not that. It's just polarity in general. And we will see also that in the yin and the yang, this symbol, there is systematically a small part, a dot of yang within the yin and vice versa. Okay, so it's the same principle that we are not entirely masculine energy, despite the fact that we are a man. Personally, I can tell you, I don't know, I don't have any, let's say, electronic device to measure, but I could consider that maybe I have, I don't know, 20, 15 or 10% minimum of feminine polarity, which brings me hypersensitivity, brings me creativity, artistic dimension, and so on and so forth. Okay, it doesn't mean there's nothing to see with sexuality. And some women, for example, they can be, I don't know, say randomly, completely feminine, like super shape and so on. They like makeup and so on. Okay, they are women, purely human. I mean, not purely is badly a word said, but and in parallel, they have a charisma, they are dynamic, they are strong, they are leaders, and so on. This is yang energy. Okay, despite they can be completely super sexy and so on. There's nothing to see with that. Okay, just to keep in mind. So let's continue with this definition in Kodamari. Male energy is physics, I told you, is left hemisphere of the brain. This is the square. This is the lines. Okay, this is science. This is the symbol in alchemy of sun. Okay. Feminine part to have the equivalence is curves, is not lines, is cycle. It is the symbol in alchemy of moon and so on. Is not science, we can say it's art, it's spirituality and so on so far. Literature is intuitive approach. This is more openness. This is the unknown. This is more the faith. This is the invisible world and so on. Yang, masculine, is more rationality, framework, structure, and so on and so forth. Okay, so physics, metaphysics. Metaphysics means also spirituality. And by the way, in all movement, initially, originally, before being in a patriarchal, word, because patriarchal means the father, etymologically speaking in Latin, means male have the power. Okay, officially, I'm not saying it's not machist vision, but initially, spirituality comes from women. Okay, that's why you have in Greece the Pythia or Piti, and so on. They are intercessors, between the invisible world. That's why we still have this in the Jewish tradition or perception. The fact that the Judaity, the Jewish aspect, is given by the mother. Okay, it means that if the mother is Jew and the father is not, is goim, as we say, or gentle. Okay, it's from the Middle Age, but anyway, gentle means that non-Jewish. Okay, the kid become Jewish. Okay, but vice versa, it doesn't work. Okay, because the transmission is through the woman in this perspective, but reminding us the fact that women were holding this position of spirituality, the connection with the invisible world. That's why we have so much, let's say, comeback of, okay, this is also probably style, mimicry, okay, the adaptation with the environment and so on, but the goddess movements, okay, a lot of feminine goddess movement and so on, and or also shamanism, once again I say, is just an aside, but saying that is not necessarily a trend, is not trendy necessarily, it is also the fact that it is coming back from the origins of mankind, basically. Okay, humanity in a certain extent. So it's a natural spirituality without dogma, without is just intuitive part. Okay, it's same for the goddess. The goddess basically is activating the individual divine dimension of each one. Okay, it's not perceiving God as a old man with beard and so on outside. Is concretely activating the divinity within. Okay, because considering that God is prevalent and everywhere and so on. Okay, so that's why also when I say Yin Yang, we can see also the perspective when we say that even the homosexuality, it is always Yin Yang. Yeah, a couple of two men, one of them maybe is more feminine and so on. Same for two women, it's the same principle. But if we go further, in terms of forces, feminine is more what we call centripetal, okay, and force, I will explain later, and masculine is more centrifugal, okay. Centrifugal means expansion, okay, spread, and centripetal, is more focusing to the center. When you concentrate, you come back to the center, right? It's the same principle. So women are more focusing on the household, for example, preserving the household, the kids and so on, education, The male dimension is an archetype, of course, and a force. I'm not talking about a caveman going to hunt and the woman preserving, but it's a little bit of this. Okay, it's still in our genes, it's still in our cells and so on, in the Akashic record, collective unthinking, collective unconsciousness, and so on and so forth. Okay, so centrifugal is the Big Bang. Okay, expansion. Okay, hunting, populating the world, and so on, and discovering the new words, and so on, science, and so on, always going further and further. And that's why we can consider that's why the hormones are different. Women are more for preserving, and males are more for expanding. Okay, that's why, it's not generalities, but that's why. More, I'm not justifying, of course not, but that's why maybe males have more tendency to be unfaithful. I'm just saying is not what I think, this is not what I am, this is not thing. This is just observation according to the biology. Okay? And by the way, if we go further, we can consider that male being like this, the fear of the potential that the woman has towards him, because he feels that he is, let's say, weak towards the proposals of women, thinking that every males are more animated through this weaknesses of the fact that the vulnerability, in a certain extent, giving more force to the woman. In a certain extent, she can say, "Oh yeah, yes, this guy, or this guy," and all men will accept. To be really down to earth, very low perspective. But it's one of the reasons why the woman has been always perceived as a threat for men in a certain extent, and that's why they are under in the society, in the position of the society in general, and so on, patriarchal society. That's probably the male's fears. Okay, you can see for many things, because the man is never sure at 100% before the test, of course, of the offspring, if the kid is concretely, properly is on one or not. And so on and so forth. Okay, so let's go further. Let's say we can consider, so Yin Yang is really embracing, and when you see a phallus, penis, and the sex of the woman, it's completely embracing. But we can see either is a penetration with the penis, and or it's just embracing. It's just let's say. Mastering also. So active, passive, depending on your perspective and perception as well. Well, we can say this sex and is kind of, if it's considered as reaching the orgasm, is like threshold. What does it mean? You know, like steps. Okay, stairs to reach climax orgasm. Okay. Stairs of pleasure, for which at the top you fall down. You are, let's say, overwhelmed through the pleasure, emotions, and so on. You lose control. It's kind of non-time space. It's kind of suspended time, and so on. Okay, and this is what we call in psychoanalysis small death. Okay, why? Because in this notion of always evolution, it's like satiety. Normally, when you eat, you cannot eat anymore because you have enough. Okay, but some people feel bad because it's finished. Okay, normally you have one of the 4 hormones. Through that is what we call oxytocin. Okay, and so you are full of happiness and so on. But some people, they suffer about the small death. Okay, we'll come back later on that. Then there is another thing, perception, is what we call Aleph. Aleph in Hebrew is the first letter in Jewish alphabets. okay, Hebraic alphabet, is the first letter, okay? First letter, this is the equivalent of alif in Arabic and elif in Turkish. But anyway, it's just the openness. This is joining alpha and omega, the beginning and the end, because this is a kind of singularity points for which this is well depicted in the book from Paulo Coelho. Is a Brazilian that you very famous. He wrote Alchemists, and is an insider trying to democratize a lot of symbols and so on, like alchemy, but not only the reason for being and so on and so forth. But anyway, he depicts quite well in a book entitled Aleph, explaining that. What is it concretely? Is a moments for which two individual people, so there is a small aleph and a great aleph. Great aleph is with two people, and the small one is only a single person. But the great aleph is just the coordination, the synchronization with two individual people, the consciousness mixing up of merging to find back this absolutes. And if there is sexuality and love together, combining is like explosion, and there is no time space, to make it short. Okay, but I invite you to read this book. It's very fascinating. So Aleph, absolutes, okay, and small death in psychoanalysis. And let's consider three essential points. This is interesting because there are essentially two taboos for human beings. The first one is death, and the second one is sex and love. Okay, sex is the origin of life, and death is the end of life. But we can see also in different perspectives. Some mystical people, some religious people, traditional people, whatever, spiritual, some people see differently. Death is just the end of illusion. Apocalypse means literally a revelation in Greek. This is the lift of the veils. When you unveil, you take it out, the veils of illusions, Maya for Hindus. Okay, so when you die, for certain people, this is the end of this illusion, the matrix, the materiality exclusively, and so on, and you enlarge your perspectives. That's why those who had NDA, okay, near-death experience, those who come back, usually they have expansion of consciousness. Okay, so on the other perspective, spiritual perspective, death is the beginning, and life is just separating from the absolute for existing, for duality, and you are limited in a ego, duality, individuality, and also a body. Okay, so but in a certain extent both is interesting because this is the beginning and the end, whatever you see, but it's systematically alpha and omega. So the two taboos are alpha and omega, for which we can find it back through Aleph and or sexuality. That's why I insist it can be perceived as down to earth, we make love and so on, or sex and then we have offspring, animals, and or we can also see it like emotional with love and so on, and or with spiritual and even mystical dimension. So let's go down to earth. This is a great paradox, the fact that sex is omnipresent, okay? It's everywhere. Sex industry is generating 50 billions of euros. So it's equivalent, depending on the rate of 60, let's say 60 billions USD. Okay, if you want to value, take the GDP. Okay, the growth per country. There is 200 countries roughly. From the top to the rank 85. After that, from the country 85 till the last one, 200, sex industry is generating more than the yearly production of each countries. Okay, this is 50, then 40, 49, and so on and so forth. It's incredible. How come worldwide the sex industry is generating more value, more money than a country itself? Okay, so showing that it's quite prevalent everywhere. But look at it, when you go for advertising, you see, but it's not recent. Since I'm kid, it's like this. You see an advertising of yogurt. There is a naked woman. For I don't know, for a car it would be the same, or for shampoo and so on, and there are fontaine, all this kind of things. It's arouse the senses, okay, of men and women as well. Okay, so it's prevalence. Then there is the presence in the tradition. There is two kind of schools. Let's see. First is abstinence, the fact not to have sex by choice, and the second one is consuming, having sex. Let's see the two different schools. First one is Christianity for priests, okay, which is artificial. Why? Because this is a measure. It is a role implemented in the Middle Age in Europe, because the Vatican wanted to preserve the heritage, the financial heritage of the priests. And if they would have had some kids, you can imagine they would have kept the money. Okay, so that's essentially artificial and for, let's say, materiality and also for financial dimension. The second one is Isin. Isin is a current from Jewish, the period of Christ. Okay, Essens probably taught John the Baptist and also Jesus himself. Okay, but anyway, they were not practicing sex to activate a kind of energy. Okay, so they were doing this. Buddhists also, Buddhist monks do the same. That's why in a temple and so on, they avoid spicy garlic and so on, because they don't want to be, to accelerate the libido. That's a part. Sadhus, so sadhus are mystic people from Hinduism. Okay, most of the time they're naked, they don't want any materiality and so on and so forth. But anyway, it's to activate. Abstinence generates a transcendental energy. Okay, but then there is maybe a middle path in between abstinence. We can do a fasting of sex for a few days or for a few weeks or a few months if you consider it's good for you and so on. And this truly activates something, a vitality that you know, a kind of transcendence. Okay, so this is a school. The second one is, let's say, for example, rabbi, imam, and or pastors. None of them can consider the fact that you preach and you are not married, and thereby you don't have kids. Why? Because you anchored within reality, in materiality. You have kids, offsprings, so thereby you're aligned with the materiality, universe, and so on and so forth. So it's a good alignment with materiality, okay, horizontal perspective, and spirituality, vertical perspective. So it's combining both. But that's why, by the way, it's one of the reasons of Protestants, they protested against Vatican and Christianity, towards this notion of the fact that priests cannot have kids, be married, and or also for other reasons, the fact, for example, there is no intercessors between God and human beings, not priests and so on. Well, it's just an aside. But just there's two, let's say, perspective of sexuality, and once again, it can be combining both. In the mystical transmission, it was sometimes through sex. But the problem of this, by saying that, I'm talking about past and history and so on. Even currently, some sects, sectum, are practicing that. Okay, like the guru gives sex to disciple. And sometimes there is harassment, abusing stuff and so on, due to the power of the person, the charisma and so on. But anyway, there were some sacred courtesans, that's sacred prostitutes, okay, in a certain extent. So they had no children and so on, and it was to honor gods and so on and so forth. So in Eastern philosophies like Taoism, there is sexual Taoism. Okay, it's like there is one branch which is a Chinese medicine is a part of it. Okay, same for Tantrism, sexual Tantrism. Tantra is, let's say, Tantrism means energy across. Okay, it's to transfer and to activate. Okay, but it's not exclusively sex. Tantrism is philosophy. It's like saying that Ayurveda is only for food. No, there is Ayurveda. It's the science of life. This is like a book of life. And then you have only one chapter regarding nutrition, which is Ayurvedic nutrition. Okay, just one chapter. So sex within Tantrism is the same. Okay, but concretely, this is activating through the kundalini, the serpent of life, the serpent of energy, sexual, like spiral from your coccyx, okay, from let's say your anus, okay, till here your crown, until your third eye, and thereby your crown, okay, for the chakras. This is exactly what you have Kundalini activation, Kundalini yoga in Tantrism as well, in Taoism as well, for Sex Tao, with the notion there is essentially three most important chakras which are called Dantian. Okay, lower Dantian, which is sex, mid Dantian, which is heart, and then which is the third eye, upper Dantian. Okay, so just for you to see that in a certain extent is a part of all culture. As I told you, Hinduism and Tao and so on don't consider any movements, any aerobic and so on sport through spirituality. Is the same for sexuality. There is no point not to have sex if you are spiritual for them. Okay, so we can consider that there was a load, especially in Europe, with Christianity during many decades, more than decades, sorry, centuries. Okay, because church, I mean, was imposing the fact that it was a sin, badly perceived. If you watch the movie Ultra Orthodox, depicting life, current life, because it's from a true story from 2010, something like this. It's Hasidim Jewish community, Hungarian origins from in Brooklyn, in New York. You see the scene of love is exactly what was in the past. They have clothes, okay, it's in the darkness. They're like this, and then they just wait and see, and they just make love, but like there is no premise, there is no atmosphere, nothing. Okay, no caress, no kissing, nothing. I watched this movie. It's quite so. Of course, we can consider end of 60s, not 60s and 60s, especially in France, movements, May 68, also in States, peace and love movements and so on, New Age, also the beginning of New Age. There is a kind of emancipation of women, of pleasure and so on. Okay, so that's why it's a bit sex and roll and rock and roll and so on. But it's the moments for which there is the rights of sexual enjoyments, which is a kind of revolution, because before it wasn't the case. And we will see the impact it will have in the society for love also, for couples in general, because it was a kind of not power, but just equality in a certain extent, even for materialistic dimension. In my country, it's supposed to be country of human beings, okay? The woman can only have credit accounts in 69. I was born in 80. Only 15 years before my birth, women are completely slave of their woman, of their men, of their husband, sorry. If they wanted to divorce, it was impossible. So imagine the gap. And it was exactly also the same for sexuality in general. Okay, so just a short aside, and also a link with the next one. Well, sexuality can be perceived as recharging or discharging energy. Okay, so let's continue with some techniques. Okay, first of all, it's very important, this is my perception of preparation. Consent, of course, mutual consent, form, good communication, we will develop later on, and or also spontaneity, preparation plus spontaneity. For me, it's really important. Secondly, create an atmosphere that you like. Is not to impose yourself, of course, and your partner as well. Like what? Romantic lights, music, not hip hop or reggaeton or whatever. If it's exciting you, why not? But I don't know, standard like cliché, Barry White or whatever. But music, let's say underwear, lingerie, and so on. This kind of thing to arouse the senses. Okay, because this is really also important. Then to take time, to have time, and to take time, give yourself time. Okay, or sometimes it can be quick, expeditious. It can be also without protocol. I'm not saying this is this or this. This is up to anybody. But taking time doesn't mean that you can't. Of course not. But then the premises that said, vulgarly speaking, the preliminary. Okay, it's has to be perceived. It's not compulsory, of course, but it's a kind of exploration of the other one, especially if it's a new partner, and or you can always discover something for someone. Okay, and it's a kind of, sensuality and sensitivity. This is very combined meaning and sense. Sensuality and sensitivity. Sensitivity means that you're receptive and you feel also the person, you understand the body of the person, what the person likes and so on. No need necessarily to talk. It can be also, let's say, kinesthetic, means the body language, instead of necessarily oral language, of course. But with the notion, of course, we can go, this is the notion of to be altruist. You means that try to analyze if you prefer giving pleasure or receiving or good balance and so on. Try to visualize how you are and so on. The notion of feeling more than necessarily to calculate everything, to rationalize, to program and so on. It has to be more in the mindfulness than calculation in general. Emitting sounds, it can stimulate your own pleasure and your sexuality, and also the fact to hear the person, your partner, can be also a source of excitement. Okay, I'm gonna do a parallel with food. When you eat, personally, I eat only once a day, so most of the time when I eat, I'm super hungry. And honestly, it's like an orgasm. It's like, oh my God, it's so good. The fact to do that, it's enhance, it's emphasize my pleasure, my taste buds. Okay, taste buds. It's the same principle. If you do that, I said to you, try to do it. You will see how your orgasm will be bigger, and your pleasure in general. Okay, and it's the same principle when we arrive in Asia. Sometimes some people with their Western eyes, they are a little bit annoyed by the fact that Chinese people or Vietnamese and so on, they do a lot of noise with their mouth when they eat. Okay, why? Those who appreciate good wine, French wine, Italian, and so on, when they drink, they taste, for example, and when they are expert, how do? They do exactly the same. They drink and they do that for what? For having kind of circulation of this, not the sound, but the taste is the same principle. So when you do that also for sex, try to do it, you will see. Mindful massage, or let's say blind or whatever, but to activate something. Why there is so important space of massage within Ayurveda and also Tantrism? Because you can see, oh, I don't have energy, I don't want to make love and so on. Okay, do a massage, I do a massage. Okay, you're gonna see. You touch different sensitive or erogenous zone, and you can see some people is more the neck, some people is more the feet and so on. Just the fact to see the feet, some people are very fetishes for feet, okay, and so on. It can increase pleasure, okay. So, but even just the bottom, okay, just the bottom. I mean, not the anus, the bottom. It for men or for women, it's exciting, or even. Well, different depending on people, but just a massage, yes, is a good preparation for relaxing and also to arouse sensitivity and exciting. Break the routine by being creative. Creativity for sexuality is extremely important. It can be many things. Be aware and have fun as well, like costumes, some archetypes like. Maybe some standards and some cliche, but the schoolgirl, the nurse, or the I don't know, the fireman for ladies and so on, for Superman, Batman, I don't know. Some people maybe, but more thinking about special things like SM also, sadomasochist can work. That's why the movie 50 Grades of Shade worked that much. And also because it's a part of unconsciousness, collective unconsciousness, torture, and so on. So it's a way to neutralize. Of course, usually it's not to be painful, of course, but it can be exciting, spanking, and so on. Just a whip, all this kind of thing. Those people need accessories. It can be also punctual and so on. So this is or wing or whatever, but it can be a source of pleasure. To do some scenarios. What does it mean? You can invent a short story and so on, whatever. Be creative with that. The notion sometimes there is many unconscious aspects. Sometimes is the contrary of society. For example, the woman who is more, for instance, passive in her job, for example, secretary or accountant and whatever, she would like more, maybe is not absolute, to have a certain domination. And on the other way around, the CEO, the politician who would like to be spanked, for example, or submitted to a woman or a man or whatever, because he has the leadership in his life. And on the other way around, it's possible as well. Okay, so try new position. For example, Kama Sutra. Kama Sutra is an art, but of course, it's not a performance. Also, it's very beautiful. It can be fun. It can be mystical and so on. Don't be ashamed about what you like. In Conversation with God, the book, is really well explained. What moments God expresses himself and itself, herself, whatever, and saying, "I am in the old bedrooms because it's part of me. I'm everywhere." So don't be ashamed about that. Okay, so that's really important for me. Pilates is a good way for stimulating and contracting, for example, pelvis or perineum, okay, and for which even the exercise I proposed in the key 25, if my memory is correct, the fact, I do a spiral or some movement like this and so on, activate that for men and for women. These are borrowed from Pilates, okay, so some exercise you can see and try to do it and so on. Sexual tantrism. Okay, so Kama Sutra, kundalini stimulation, all this can work also. I told you, Ligam is masculine energy, Yoni is the feminine energy, combining activate Shakti energy, which is also Shushuma in a certain extent. Okay, so I can give you a tantric exercise. For example, you are just on your knees and you touch your partners on the knees, okay, like this, just a physical short contact like this, and you only have eye contacts, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever, and then you try to be completely involved in the person. First step. Second step, you do a bit more like this, okay? You don't touch sex versus sex. It's like this, and at this moment, you just try to put your hand on the chest of the person. For what? For being synchronized with the heart beatings, both. Third step, you do the same, sex, okay, this time, and with head fronts facing, okay, like third eye versus third eye, and you close the eyes at this moment and so on, and you try to arouse the connection and also the exciting, okay? If you can afford, which is good way, is to visualize. If you are a woman, you visualize a tetrahedron on this side, and if you are a man, on the other side. What does creates? So woman, clockwork, and man, counterclockward, okay? When you do that, by starting making love, you activate what we call Merkaba. Is Solomon, David start of David, that you can find for Jewish, but also it's world heritage you have in many traditions, and so on and so forth. But you can do it also when you have your orgasm. Another way is the visualization, when you have this pleasure coming, starting from your sex, and you imagine there is a beam of light crossing all your chakras and starting in getting out from your heads and going to your partners. Like this, you create a dynamo, the person is doing the same, and you activate a certain dimension. If you can afford those, a Taurus, type what is a Taurus on internet, you will find in 3Ds and so on. This is an activation of very wide energy. Well, you can visualize that. I invite you also to do protection ritual right before starting, as protection mantra and so on. Why? Because you never know what you're going to activate through sex. Masturbation, I need to talk about that. Why should it be bad? Okay, you have pleasure. Why is bad? Okay, so I think those who don't have sex and don't admit or they can be frustrated. It's just activation of good circulation and so on. So don't be ashamed, I think, about that. It's not bad, it's not dirty, it's life. Once again, porn, I'm not recommend or forbid, I don't forbid anything, of course, but it can stimulate exciting. But in parallel of that, it can create addiction and also just people focusing, and especially for new generation, because a lot of people, when there is taboo, no anatomy, school and so on and so forth, and some people learn through porns. The problem is it's give a pattern of how to do, okay? But dissociating sometimes love and sexuality, okay? So sometimes it's a bit a problem to recombine both aspects. Some tips. Good communication for me is essential, really important. Good communication. Listen to the other, your partner. First one, listen. Second, listen either you talk orally or when you do sexuality. If the person, but you can see, no need to draw it. Listen to yourself as well. Listen to your partner, listen to yourself, and then also express yourself. Take the hand of the person, or say expressively one moment and so on. I would like we try this and so on. Why being ashamed? This is horrible. It's a judgment, yes. I heard several times some men saying, okay, I respect my wife, so I don't do certain things, but I prefer to do with other ladies and or with prostitutes. Come on. So she doesn't like. She can make an effort or not. We respect, or men, or whatever. Okay, so, but just, I think communication is very important. Second advice, very important, be confident. Women need to be confident. What does it mean? It means, for example, when a man is a strength of proposal, source of proposal, or not. A woman can be as well. But the fact, for example, to be respected as a woman, you don't talk about that. She knows that she trusts you for that. It's super important to establish a certain atmosphere. But same for men as well. You know, there is a big problem in this society of performance and so on. There is a huge pressure on males, on men. Why? Because they need to have erection, as a matter of fact. So they want to be good at bed, okay, at sex, okay. But this is creating notion of it's affects also the performance, because you know this is something important in the good communication. It's not because a woman doesn't have secretion, okay. A man had problems of is not erection is not linked to desire, is not linked to love, okay. It can be independent. So it's super important at this moment that people feel the trust and also confidence, okay. There is no notion of performance. Okay, it's fair enough, let's take a break, or we'll do later. Is not the finality. You can have pleasure, good moments just with caress. You can, it's not because you don't reach. You know, most of people, they try to find something difficult to reach. To have at the same moment the orgasm, which is extremely difficult. We are all different. It's like you want to eat with someone and you want the person to reach the satiety at the same point. But she doesn't need the same amount of food and you don't need necessarily, you eat faster and so on. So how come? And does it break the good dinner? It doesn't. Okay, so that's why it's important to know each other, to know yourself, your desire and so on. And also if you are quick or not, same for women. It's maybe you need to spend more time for preliminary premise and so on. It's completely something you need to adjust. Of course, it does make sense, huh? But also libido can come and disappear. It can be because you are tired, you are depressed. It can be a period of time, can comes and then suddenly come back. If you had a bad experience, it's not only grandpa having problem of erection, it's happened to most of men. And it can be when you're young, you're afraid it's your first time, and or it's not your first time, but you're afraid because you don't know exactly how to put the condom, for instance, and or you, at the beginning you have difficulties, you don't know exactly, and then so you're stressed directly. Okay, so you had a bad experience, and then you think with your limited consciousness the next time, and you're afraid, so you're stressed, and so on. So it's a spiral. So if the partner, you have a good discussion, don't worry, take it easy. It's not big deal if it doesn't work. It will work at a moment. We do a massage, we are confident, and so on. There is no reason, okay? And if it continues, go for a therapist and or a doctor and so on, sexologist or an expert of it, of course. Do it when you want. No need to impose necessarily. There is a marital duty. Is horrible. Okay, why? Because she doesn't want. Okay, so she does the star and she wait and see. Okay, I think about something. This is horrible. So to be a little bit vulgar, but unfortunately, very often there is a couple sex, but it's completely individualistic. People are just pick up, self-service, okay, and that's it. They just think about the pleasure. They take it, and then they left, or it's finished. Okay, what's next? What we gonna have for dinner, for example? So no word, no quota. There is no we have to do 2 times a week or 3 times or once a week or once a day and so on. There is no convention. It's up to anybody. Some people in the couple, they just practice once a month or once a year. They're happy like this. Some people they practice every day, daily, and at the end they are always arguing and they are not feeling in harmony. Okay, so there is no comparison to have. This is really important. Listen to your body. Okay, there is cycles. For men it's more every 3 days. For women maybe you can have a peak when you have your periods. It can happen and so on. Very important, the concept of letting go. Okay, letting go, and in parallel of that, the presence of love and so on. Mindfulness, I say, you are completely aware of what you are doing at this present time. This is also very important. Breathing can be also activating, stimulating, enhancing the climax, the orgasm, and so on. Spontaneity. It's good sometimes not to see exactly what you're gonna do and so on. It's part of the game as well. Be yourself, once again, express yourself, discuss, say what you like. There is no shame to have. You like this? Okay, why not? And so on. Say she doesn't like, he doesn't like, okay, fair enough. Or maybe she or he will do an effort or not. No shame. We are what we are. We have been created like this. So important also to balance, good mix. We know we are animals originally, okay? Reptilian dimension means this is the rest of what we have, like bestial. We are soft animals. So there is a good combo between, bestial and animal and sensual. It can be combined, it can be some moments, one session, and or at the beginning, like a spanking or a slut and so, okay? Fine, and then they finish, I love you and so on, caress. There is no else, okay? But I think it's good to be yourself. What you like, what she likes, with respect and good communication. Once again, we are always in this notion. State of mind, what does it mean? There is no else, no age. Tell you, just to share a bit, my grandpa, he was 68 years old. He found a new girlfriend, and he was in love and so on. It was very funny because as a kid he was calling me like a teenager, we are still practicing the mysterious think, okay, in quote mark, 3 times a week, you see? So it's possible, still possible, whatever the age. I know some women, they were supposed to have when they were 50 years old, they didn't like love, they make love, sex, never had pleasure and so on, and suddenly, because there was the good alchemy with this guy or this woman or whatever, this is not forever. It can be psychologic, it can be physiologic, your body and so on. You can treat with plants, psychologic, you can see a psycholog and so on, psychoanalyst and so on, so on. You can see a doctor. There is things and there is solution for everything. Okay, good nutrition. Having a good nutrition, if you eat junk food, drinking a lot of alcohol and so on, of course it affects your libido and also your performance, as a matter of fact. Then how to manage and to stimulate your libido? You can have, for example, some aphrodisiac for women or for men. I can give you some of them. Cocoa, dark chocolates, spicy for women, dates, saffron, ginger, figs, basilic, avocado, truffle, asparagus, turmeric, and for men, garlic, ginkgo is good also for neurons, memories, and so on. Red ginseng, almonds, basil, cocoa, saffron, oyster because it's good of vitamin B, B1, A, E, and C. Fruits, more, lemon and or citrus, lemon or orange and so on. Honey also. Green vegetables, very good. Dark chocolate and turmeric as well. Doing sports, of course, it's activating and so on. Sleeping well, if you're tired and so on, the performance it's affecting, of course. Avoid stress, okay, referring to key 53, be confident and so on. Coming back to what we said before. Consult a specialist if you need, of course. Don't be afraid about consulting. It's happened to many people, don't worry. Having fantasy, okay, it's not bad. It's like this. Sometimes we have a bit torridous, sexy dreams and so on. Do you control if you dream about killing someone and so on? No. So it's your unconscious part. Express him. that's fair enough. No big deal, okay? The thing about jealousy, the thing about faithful, there is no imposed laws or rules. If there is mutual respect and so on, people are open, they're open. If they are not, it's okay. You know, but jealousy, to analyze why you are jealous, is a question of possession, dependence, openness. This is the desire to do it as well, to be unfaithful or not. This is a frustration. This is you are faithful by default and so on, whatever. But anyway, there is no miracle recipe. I told you, only miraculous adaptation. Sex is sacred. Sex is profane. Sex is recreative. It's up to anybody, depending on the moment, the period of time, the people, and so on. The alchemy, okay, the connection with one and another one, okay. But it can be magical, alone and or by sharing. If you add something like magical, like the salt, okay, which is with love, and this is what we will see in the next key, because love is still different, and when you have this connection, good sex plus love together, it creates what we call in mystical dimension Aleph, as I said but before. This is Paredra and consorts. If you see what is it, it is like two divinity expressing themselves within the matter, the density, and so on, and it creates something extraordinary. All right, I invite you to think about all these elements. This is only one key for helping you to try to shape your own master key to open up the door of consciousness or whatever you want. It's up to you to decide. Of course, as you know, all the roads lead to Rome and to home and to the dome. Thank you for your attention and see you very soon.